This is 4.7 Skin Cancer and Burn Notes. The essential question is, how are different types of cancer and burns categorized or classified and diagnosed? Cancer is an abnormal cell growth or a lump or a mass anywhere in the body, and the most common type of cancer is skin cancer. There are two types of cancers. One is called a benign or encapsulated, which means that it does not spread to other areas and it can be removed surgically. Malignant, on the other hand, is the more aggressive type of cancer. The ones that could actually cause death is the one that metastasize, which means that it can spread to other parts of the body. The first type of skin cancer is called basal cell carcinoma. It is the least malignant out of the other ones. It is the most common types, and it arises from stratum basale. Next is the squamous cell carcinoma. It arises from the stratum spinosum, and it can metastasize to lymph nodes, but early removal or detection can allow for a great chance of cure. The next one is malignant melanoma, or just melanoma by itself. It is the most deadly of the skin cancers, and it is the cancer of the melanocytes. It can metastasize rapidly to the lymph nodes or the blood vessel. And the way to detect melanoma, there is a method called ABCD rule. The first thing you need to note about recognizing melanoma is for looking for any signs of new moles that might appear on the skin, and then you want to keep an eye on it to see if there is a change in shape or a change in the size of the mole. The first one is A, which stands for asymmetry. This means that you are looking for whether the two sides, the left and right half of the mole, is a mirror image of each other. If it is not, then it can indicate melanoma. B equals border. It stands for border, and which means that in a melanoma, the border is going to be irregular and there is not a distinct boundary between the healthy skin and the cancerous skin. Whereas the non-melanoma cancer, there will be a distinct border between the two, and it's going to be more of a roundish or oval-shaped mole. The next letter is C, which stands for color. In a melanoma type of cancer or mole, you are looking for a variation in the color, which means that certain areas of the mole is going to be darker in pigment and the other areas will be lighter, whereas a regular non-melanoma mole might be one uniform color. D stands for diameter. You are looking for the size of the mole, and if it is larger than 6 millimeters, then you can detect that it might be melanoma. Now, in order for it to be melanoma, you must have all four signs. If one of those things are not missing, then it might not be melanoma. This is a diagram showing you the difference between a normal mole and a melanoma mole. And the ones on the left column are your normal ones, and the ones on the right column are the ones that are actually diagnosed as having melanoma. The first one is asymmetry. So if you draw a line right down the middle of that mole, notice that the left half and the right half is a mirror image of each other. If you look at the other picture, notice that the left half and the right half is a different shape. So that could indicate melanoma. Border. Notice the mole on the right has a distinct border, and it's of an almost looks like a oval shape, whereas the melanoma, there is no distinct border. There might be a border here, and the borders are kind of jagged and irregular. Next is color. Notice the mole on the on the left is one uniform color. It is all black, whereas the mole on the right, notice this half is darker in color than this area, which is lighter in color. The last one is diameter. You can't really see from this picture, but this one right here on the left side will be less than 6 millimeters in size, and then the one on the right is going to be much bigger than the 6 millimeters. Next, we're going to talk about burn and how burns are classified. When you hear somebody getting a first-degree burn, it is usually only affects the epidermis, and they will have this redness to their skin, which is also called erythema, and there might be mild or no swelling involved, and only eventually what happens is the surface layer will shed and healing will happen in 2 or 3 weeks, and there will be no scarring. The most common type that you will see a first degree burn would be when you get a sunburn, and when you get that red skin and if it's really sensitive to the touch, that will be a sunburn where you have that redness in skin. Or also when you get a rug burn, when you get rub up against, scrape your skin and you get that redness, no bleeding occurs, but there is that redness and that rawness feeling, that's first degree burn. In a second degree burn, the epidermis is destroyed, but also the portion of the dermis is destroyed. And whenever you have living tissue like the dermis being destroyed, it's going to cause a swelling and build up of fluid. That's where the blisters form. Blisters are basically raised portion of the skin which is filled with fluid. Now, in a second degree burn, there can be no scarring. But if there is a breakage of the blister, or because of the breakage of the skin, the blister pops open, it could cause an infection, then there can be some scarring. This is also a picture of a sunburn, but notice that it is much more extensive than the first one. You can see these raised portions of the skin, which are your blistering of the skin. So this is a lot more serious. And if they are left alone and the blisters don't pop, then you might not have scarring. But if those blisters pop and there could the skin is exposed to the environment, it can cause an infection, which means it could cause scar. Third degree burn is the most serious, and the epidermis is destroyed, the dermis is also destroyed, and at this point we have the accessory organs that are destroyed. And the coloration is going to be white or red or blackened depending on how much of the skin is burnt. And there's going to be extensive damage to the skin, and there's going to be scarring because now we're talking about epithelial tissue. They regenerate very well. Connective tissue does not. So when you get into the dermis layer and when we're dealing with the accessory organ, they are connective tissue, which means that it's going to cause scar tissue to build up. Because of the extensive damage, there is going to be require skin grafting, which means that you take skin from another area of the body and then replace it with the damaged skin. Here is a picture of third degree burn. Notice the extensive damage, and a lot of times when these type of damage occurs, it's going to cause a lot of scar tissue, a lot of skin grafting, but it will never return to its normal state. And if you ever seen somebody with a massive bad burn where the skin looks very dry and scaly and leathery, it's because of the extent of damage leads into the connective tissue, a lot of scarring going on. And because the accessory organs are damaged, it could indicate that there will be no hair growth because the hair follicles are destroyed, and there might be no sensation in that area because it could also indicate nerve damage. In order to calculate the amount of damage or the amount of burn to a body, there is a something called a rule of 9, and areas of the bodies are given a percentage, and then based on which body parts are burned, they can calculate the percent body that is burned. So each body is given 9% to each body, and the area is divided into 11 areas. That 9 times 11 equals 99%, and then the genital region would be considered 1%, which equals 100%. The most dangerous thing, the first 24 hours of a person that is burnt, is dehydration, which means that one of the main functions of skin is to prevent moisture loss. So when you don't have that skin, then your body is losing fluids, and that could cause loss electrolyte imbalance, which means you are losing vital potassium and sodium that could help with muscle function and nerve function. And also circulatory shock means that you don't have enough fluid in your blood, which means that your heart is going to have a hard time pumping blood in your body. So rule of 9, the body is divided into 11 areas, and those 11 areas is given 9%. 9 times 11 is 99%, and then the genital area is 1%. So head is one area, one arm is another area, second arm is another area, the upper chest is another area, lower chest is another area, the front of the leg is another area, front of the other leg is another area, then the back is another area, and the lower back is another area, and then the back of the leg is another area, and then the other leg is another area. So there are your 11 regions, and each of those regions are 9%, and then the genital region is 1%. They all equals up to 100%. So if a person decides to jump into a hot cauldron of oil to the waist down, what's going to happen is they're going to burn, obviously, both legs. Okay, entire one leg is 18%, and so both of the legs would equal 36%. And then we're talking about the lower chest, which is 9% in the front and 9% in the back, which would be plus 18, which will give you 54%, and the genital region will give you 55%. So if a person burned their entire lower half of their body, that would be 55% burned to their body. 4.7 notes homework is, number 1, how is basal different from squamous cell carcinoma? Number 2, what is the biggest difference between first and second degree burns? Number 3, calculate the percent of burn on a person with burns to the face, front of both arms, and front of the upper chest.